Batman's ready for battle. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Merciless Wave Batman. As a child, Bruce Wayne watched as his parents were brutally killed in Gotham City's crime alley. Traumatized by their deaths, he devoted his life to becoming the world's greatest weapon against crime, the Batman. To become the ultimate vigilante, the Dark Knight disciplined his mind and body to reach the pinnacle of mental and physical superiority. He's a master detective and an expert martial artist, but his greatest weapon is his mind. Batman has a plan for every occasion, as well as high-tech weapons, gadgets, and vehicles to assist him in his relentless pursuit of justice. Before we get down to the review of Batman, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. So I'm going to take the tape measure right to the very top of what I feel to be his head, which I guess I could probably go a little bit longer because his ears are there. And stop the tape measure right there. According to the readouts, Batman stands 7.6 inches in height. We can quickly switch that to centimeters, revealing that the figure stands 19.3 centimeters exactly. Though I'm sure you wouldn't want him as a sidekick, we can just kind of move over Batman and bring in another figure for some size comparisons. Here is one of the twisted Robins, one of three, of course, that we've looked at previously on this channel to give you a good idea of how the figures stack up. I feel the Robins are a little too tall. I still think that they probably could have shortened these figures just a little bit, but at the very least, Robins are smaller than Batman, as of course they should be. Looking at the figure's accessories, one thing you won't see here currently is the arms that go along for Merciless. That's because off camera, let's go ahead and just grab it right now. Off camera, I've already taken the liberty of adding Merciless's arms. I know, yes, it's been a while since we've actually gone back and looked at the Merciless wave. Sort of got sidetracked when we were building ourselves the Bane. But we can resume, of course, with the rest of these reviews now, as it certainly should have been a long time ago. I already taken the liberty, like I said, of adding Merciless's arms. The only reason why I did that is I did have some difficulty initially putting the arms in place. So I just thought to myself, I would just, instead of suffering on screen and do it, I just actually ended up heating the pegs in hot water. You don't have to do it for the entire arm, just the peg area. And I actually already taken the liberty of putting it into the torso. One thing you will want to not forget when you are putting the arms in place is not to leave off these little cup joints. You can see these are actually on the inside of the torso. What you may not know is that these joints, these socket joints, fall out. They're not really even attached in there. So you just want to make sure that those are in there before then you firmly plant the arms in place. And this is what we've got so far for Merciless. I know a little bit behind. Have a look at it. We've still got to do the head, of course, a couple of shoulder pad pieces, and of course the legs. And then we're going to be making much more progress than we have the last several weeks. Moving that to the side, to come and also include with Batman, that's similar to all the other DC Multiverse figures, if I can actually pick it up. It comes included with the trading card. Now, this is the Dark Knight's Metal Batman, but you could easily also say that this is Batman from DC Rebirth. The one thing about it is the outlined emblem there on his chest done in yellow, and then, of course, the cape, the interior of the cape, all done in purple, which you may not already be pointing out. The inside of this Batman cape is just black. Not really sure why they didn't go the route of doing it purple, especially for the fact that they're using a reference material like the card and clearly showing you that the inside of the cape is in fact, yes, purple. Flipping around to the back of the card, you've got the source, Forged from Metal, the New Age of Heroes, Ashcan edition from Comics 2017. Real name is Bruce Wayne. Height 6'2", and again, Batman's very lean, 210 pounds. We'll put that to the side. Batman also comes included with the same, in fact, display stand that we've seen in all the other cases of the DC Multiverse figures, with a little footnote down below, except for the Superman and actually the Scarecrow also came with different display stands. But most of the line have come included with this same black styling of stand, molded black plastic with the DC logo down below, and one singular peg that you can see right there that will actually go on the underside of Batman's feet. Is that where peg holes go? Pegs? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. You're very smart viewers. Batman also comes included with a couple of axes. And I dig these. I really like the designs of these quite a bit. The axes are not carbon copies to one another. You can probably clearly see there that they are slightly different. The front of the axe is very much similar, But the back of the axe very much drastically changes. You have a very similar style of smaller axe on the end, another blade. Whereas this one almost has like a pickaxe. So good for stabby. The top of it is also slightly different as well. You see this has the additional spikes on the top. One thing I will commend McFarlane Toys for actually doing, if you actually look at the blade here, the blade is different from the other. In other words, the notches aren't in the same place. And in cases like this, you can actually see there's a little cross marking there against the plastic. So I dig that. I like that these aren't, they're unique. They're unique. They're not the exact same axe. To get that into Batman's hands, just grab the figure here. They're not as difficult as I thought they would be. One of the big issues I've usually had with this line is that the handles for their weapons always seem super big. And I guess it is sort of the case also with the axes, so I don't really want to dismiss the fact that the axes are difficult to get in there. But at least the plastic on the hands are soft and pliable enough that you can get the axes wedged in there. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Just pry the fingers away. If it does help you a bit, by all means, consider the idea of submerging the hand into like hot water, just to soften that plastic up a little bit. I suppose in hindsight, I probably could have done the exact same thing myself, but instead, yeah, I'm just going to twist that on there, and Batman's got himself some big, giant battle axes. And boy, does that ever look cool. Probably be a little bit cooler if I put in a better pose than just him literally standing here with the axes in his hand. But I will say, like, that looks pretty neat to see the Caped Crusader wielding weapons, which you don't tend to see too often. Let's go ahead. After all that, let's take the axes out of his hands. Pull that out, and put that to the side. Let's get a closer look at Batman. I will say, looking at the Caped Crusader here, what a breath of fresh air. Is that the term we like to use when something is different from what we've normally used to seeing? It is a breath of fresh air. The very different head sculpt is the one thing that I like the most about this figure. I mean, really, there's a lot of things I like about this figure anyways. But if we start to the top and we start checking off the things that I enjoy about this particular Batman, right at the very top of that list definitely would be the head sculpt. And that sort of anguished-looking mouth portrait that you don't tend to see with a lot of figures. Neutral head sculpts, neutral expressions are the things that you normally tend to get with a lot of figure lines. Yeah, not here with Batman. Batman, you get a full visible set of teeth. You also get the top and bottom lip. And actually, it really has a great-looking profile when you see it from the side. It's got a real nice curve to it, and it almost seems to follow the same natural shape of the cowl and goes right into his chin. Although, of course, the chin is sunk in a little bit more so. As good as this head sculpt may seem, one thing I'm sure many people probably have already pointed out is the fact that the head is attached to the neck. What do I mean by that? This is all molded plastic. This is all one piece. So when it comes to the articulation on the figure, which we'll talk about in a second, literally you're just moving this one single piece. It doesn't bother me, really, because I would rather more consistent transition, as you can see, a nice smooth continuation of that shape, than to start breaking that up, because obviously they would have to put a gap in between that to get a ball joint happening. Even if you did put a ball joint in there, you really wouldn't be able to get much in the way of head motion, simply just because the head is so close to the neck. In a case like this, it doesn't really bother me at all, the fact that Batman's head is part of his neck, because again, I like the look of it more so, and I don't mind you sacrifice a little bit of articulation. It's still there, it's still at the base of the neck, so it's not like he doesn't have any, but again, he loses a little bit up at the top of the head. Like I said, doesn't really bother me at all. That is a great looking head sculpt though. Probably one of my favorite head sculpts that we've gotten from the DC Multiverse line so far, just because it is so very different than what we're used to seeing. Speaking of what we're also not used to seeing is probably this style of costume. Now again, this is probably closer to being like DC Rebirth, but the thing that it lacks a little bit in is the fact it doesn't have the interior done in purple. It could be a bit jarring, I'm sure, to people that don't like the DC Rebirth design, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they just decide to omit 86, is that what they call it? They 86 something at a restaurant. Maybe they decide just to 86 the purple, just because maybe it would be just a little bit too stark to see it on Batman. I will say, like, the cape does look great, with or without the purple. I'm not really sure which one I would have preferred. The purple would have looked great, because of course it's a continuation of his design from Rebirth. But in all honesty, I mean, I don't mind the fact it looks black, like, because at least it's a little bit more of a consistent Batman design. A little bit inconsistent, I suppose, is of course the raised emblem. The emblem is outlined here in yellow. Gone away is the oval in favor of just outlining the shape of the bat. A very simplified looking bat design. You could probably also see this, hopefully if the light is doing it justice. There are some nice little cracks and damaged areas to his costume. He's got some few rips here on the sides, and most definitely he's got that across his emblem as well. That looks really nice. This bat costume is sort of a combination of just a regular bat suit, and of course all this kind of armor plating that he's got on here as well. It's actually a different color too than the rest of his costume. The lighter costume color is probably what we're more used to seeing, but then you've got a more darker area where it's got the additional plating. And what's interesting is that this area right here is also that of a bat emblem. See that with the little ears, the wings on the side? Strange really that it's a continuation of the, I guess Batman just likes to brand himself from head to toe. Really interesting there. The yellow does really a great job of popping on the figure, because really all the rest of the figure relies just on the gray and the black. The yellow really does add a little bit of something, and has you then focus your eye in on it to really check that out. Especially like even like utility belt. A little bit more streamlined, I would say, than your regular traditional utility belt. Of course, more just simple squares than pouches. I'm not even really sure where he would have housed anything. Could a Batarang actually be able to fit into one of these pockets? Maybe. I don't really know. See all there's these gashes, rips, and tears, all these scratches there on the side of his costume. Each one of them, I'm sure, tells a story, whatever that story may actually be. Here, at least, they've gone with a darker color to accent the damage in his costume. While really the rest of it, unfortunately, even like the gash here on the side, it's there and sculpted in the plastic, but unfortunately, because it's not painted, it doesn't really have a contrast against the rest of the coloring of his costume. He's got the larger, broader looking gauntlets here on his sleeves. Still the little spiked blades that stick out from the end. I think actually one of these, yeah, this one right here, I'm probably going to have to heat up a little bit. Maybe take a hairdryer or something to it. See if I can bend that plastic back into place. I think it just got warped a little bit, taking it out from the packaging. There's the boots down below there as well. Really just only relying on the molding of the plastic. They didn't even feel the need to paint in there. And I don't feel like it necessarily needed paint either. And then lastly, before we get down to the articulation, I want to spin this around. Definitely by far one of the best looking capes I've seen on a Batman character. It has a nice flow to it. It sort of flows off to the side, so it doesn't have just a straight drop. I'm really, after a while, get really tired of just the straight dropping capes. So this brings something a little bit different and refreshing to the table, because it does have that nice little curve off to the side. It looks good on the back of the figure, and it looks really good on the front of the figure as well when you've got the figure on display. Let's go through the posability here on Batman. So as I've already stated, his head is part of his neck. There's really no way around it. Again, I would rather have the head be a nice looking clean sculpt and sacrifice a little bit of posability as a result of it. Great looking head sculpt. The head does rotate back and forth. While it does suffer a little bit up top, it does still deliver down below. It's got a ball socket joint, allowing the head to tilt down. Actually a good drop on that too. Bring it up. That's as far up as it will go. And then you can also rotate it back and forth this way. And you can also rock Batman's head back this way as well. For the top torso, let's get there behind the cape. He has a real substantial twist on that ball joint on the top torso area of the figure. In addition to that, he's got the exact same thing happening down below, just tucking behind his utility belt. So good range of motion there on Batman. In addition to that, his arms can hinge out. You probably have already heard that. No, I didn't break anything on the figure. He does have ratcheted joints on the interior hinges on his shoulders. In addition to that, he does also have that cup joint that we've seen rather commonly used with all the DC Multiverse figures. Batman's got it as well. Because of this, the way that it's sized, let me just show you here. Very little of it actually tucks out. And because a lot of it gets hidden by the cape, you almost don't even see that it's there. That's the way it should be. What he was doing with the animated figures, like especially the John Stewart from the Justice League line, was way too obvious of those socket joints. It really did break up that sculpt. I don't feel like that's the case here when it comes to Batman. But his arms do hinge back and forth as well. He has a swivel at the bicep, double hinge on the elbow. His hand rotates all the way around. Kind of hard to get in there, really, because you kind of get it behind the gauntlet. The gauntlet doesn't rotate, in case you are curious. It's part of this mold of his arm. Then when it comes to his legs, get too close to the camera, not drawing everybody's attention to Batman's crotch. Can you hear that? Yeah, he does have a ratchet joint on the inside of his legs as well. I don't know if you can actually see it or not. See that little lip of plastic right there? He's got several of those, and it causes like these little ledged points where the leg kind of hits those and stops. Kind of prolongs, I think, having these legs nice and tight. So you're not going to develop loose legs on these figures. The legs go forward and back as well. Batman doesn't really swivel at all on the thigh, but he does have a double hinge on the knee. He doesn't have any articulation from this part of his leg down, but he does have an ankle rocker on his foot. It hinges up and down. It rotates all the way around. Well, somewhat all the way around. And he also has toe articulation as well. And of course, we looked at it and already talked about it at the beginning of this review, looking at his accessories. Why do I keep focusing in on his peg holes? Because after all, he does come included with a display stand. Yes, by all means, use that display stand if you want to have Batman perched in a different, more unique, somewhat more interesting, I suppose, pose than simply just having him standing straight like this. Prior to hitting the record button here for final looks on DC Multiverse Batman, I was trying my best to come up with things I would have changed or done differently to this figure. And honestly, after a little bit of extensive amount of time thinking about the matter, I could come up with nothing. There's nothing I would have done differently to this figure. Now, I do want to say as well, take that with a grain of salt. My opinion is just that. It's my opinion. Somebody else that's reviewing this figure may find fault with the figure that I didn't really see, or if I did see, didn't really bother me so much. Like, for example, if this is the DC Rebirth Batman, where's the purple on the interior of his cape? As you can see, they've left it completely off. I think to myself, would I wanted to see the figure with a purple interior cape? Purple would have added a little bit of color, yes, but it may have been also too distracting on the character that if you just want a regular, basic-looking Batman design, I think it works a little bit better just keeping the black cape without having the additional purple. He also does have limitations with the head articulation, but I argue the point, though. He does have limitations. He doesn't have the separate head articulation, but it also means he has a more seamless-looking shape from the neck all the way to the top of his head. And in a case like that, I think McFarlane Toys went the better route of keeping the sculpt intact and sacrificing a little bit of the posability. He still has it at the base of his neck, and that's more than enough for me. He does have pretty cool looking accessories, pretty sharp looking accessories with a couple of battle axes. Whether I actually will decide to display him with the axes is questionable, because maybe for me, I just want to really display him just as Batman without a necessarily story specific angle or arc for this particular look for the costume. He has outside really just the emblem and the utility belt being very unique to the Rebirth design. He's just a very pure, at its core, basic looking Batman. And with the additional sculpt of the grimaced head face, I really think it's definitely one of the best Batmans that we've gotten so far from the DC Multiverse line. Disagree with me? That's okay. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the Merciless Wave DC Multiverse Batman. Not really sure if I'm going to put that all in the title or not. Also, if you're new to this channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, be sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Turn the bell notification on, and yeah, by all means, come back to this channel, because not only are we going to be looking at the long overdue completing of the Merciless, because we had to look at the Robins, then we took a gap, because we were looking at the Bane. We got to kind of resume where we've left off, and we definitely got to finish the rest of Merciless, so the rest of those reviews will be coming soon, so make sure you keep your peepers peeled. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.